Well, welcome to everybody at Gadget Show Live and to everybody watching at home. We have got a great lineup of guys for you this afternoon to find out about the gaming industry, maybe how to start off in the gaming industry, or just find out a little bit more about it. We're with Train to Game and Epic in the Gadget Show Live, as I said, and we have, let's introduce yourselves, gentlemen. Start with you, Pete.
I'm Peter Hickman. I've been in the industry for about 20 years.
Tony Bickley, been in the industry for about 31 years.
I'm Rick Alexander, CEO of AppCrowd. I'm relatively youngster, actually. You've been in the industry for only 15 years.
The youngster?
Yeah.
I'm Mike Gamble, and I'm Epic's European Territory Manager. I've been in the industry 17 years.
So we'll start with you, Mike. Quick overview of why everybody's here collectively at Gadget Show Live.
Okay, so basically what we're doing here at Gadget Show Live is it's the culmination of a 6-month competition whereby 4 teams are creating 4 different iOS titles using the Unreal Development Kit based on the Fighting Fantasy books by Ian Livingstone and Steve Jackson.
Okay, let's come to you, Tony, for a second, because you've been working with the students that have got here for over a year or more. Mm-hmm. How did you arrange this whole thing to eventually come here for the final competition?
We started last September when we were talking to Mike about the UDK engine and what an opportunity this gave us. And we started introducing our students to the technology, and then mid-November we had a game jam, which is a 48-hour creator game from Friday night through till Sunday, and we chose 4 teams. We had 10 teams going in, 4 teams coming out, which were the finalists, coming forward to today, and since then we've been working very much hand in hand, mentoring them as they come through. I think they've done an outstanding job. It's a fantastic engine, but in 3.5 months they've put the stuff that we can see here together. And then at the show, we're hopefully turning those ugly ducklings as they come into the show into the beautiful swans we'll be releasing shortly on the iTunes.
Pete, let's turn to you for a second, because you've been with Train to Game indirectly back to the very early webinars that were done with students talking to you and you helping them. So what's been the big difference you've seen between sort of 2 years ago and what the students are doing here today?
Oh, crikey. I mean, these guys, they've learned so much during the time that they've been at Train to Game. You know, they come on the courses, they're filled with enthusiasm, but you know, they don't really know much about the video games industry. After a few months, they get introduced to the different concepts of the courses that they're on, and then you know they start to gain expertise in those areas, and they can utilize that. These teams are made up of graphic artists, animators, game designers. There's production people. There's only 10 people, but everybody's pitching in lots of different ways. Okay,
and let's come over to you, Rick, because recently you've adopted some of the students into your company.
Adopted, is that the right term?
Is that the right word, adopted?
I guess it is. We have a kind of acceleration program for these guys where we take them into our studio, we give them a lot of experience, some mentoring, and they help us out. Actually, they're phenomenally valuable. I don't know what I'd do without them. I've got 3 of them right now, and I'd really like to have 10 or 15 of them, to be honest.
Well, gentlemen, let's start together. There's people out there wondering how they should get into any form of industry. You're here. Let's move along. How do we start in the industry? What's the best route? Mike?
Well, nowadays I think the best route is to get a really solid educational foundation, and I think certainly up to A-level that's got to be maths and hard sciences. You know, no matter how creative you are and no matter which job you want to finally pursue within the games industry, if you've got a good solid maths background and a good science background, you know, the rest will come. You can spend time, your spare time building games, portfolio, models, etc. What you can't do in your spare time is get a good solid grounding in the hard sciences.
I would absolutely second that. The STEM subjects are what's going to give you that grounding. So from 13, 14, 15 years old, start concentrating on those STEM subjects. Get your maths, get your hard sciences, and if you want to go into the design side of computer gaming, remember you are the vision holder. You communicate that design to the rest of the team and to the other stakeholders. So a good grounding in English and communication skills is also important.
Yeah, I'm going to pick up from that one. I think science and maths and physics is very good for coding skills, understanding the background of technology, testing, all that kind of stuff. It gives you a great foundation for being a producer, or but it doesn't really give you the right art foundation necessarily. Right. I think artists that I've certainly worked with don't necessarily have a great. And some of them do. Some of them are genius at maths, but most of them actually go more towards the creative subjects. And you look around some of these students, and I don't know actually generally what they've got from A levels or this, that, and the other. But I've got, I think, 3 A levels: D, U, and an X. I'll explain what the X is some other time. But but I started right at the bottom of testing. But I had a good foundation of understanding how programs work, having programmed since I was 7, and kind of built up from there. But I then start at the bottom of the ladder, and you keep going from there.
Yeah, I guess my grounding is in computer science. So the hardcore stuff, lots of horrible maths and old-fashioned discs and tapes and things, if anyone remembers those. But yeah, it gave me a great grounding, gave me a good understanding of the different disciplines that we have in the industry.
So are we saying that we're all agreed that if you really want to go into a career like this, whichever facet you want to go into, you're playing games as 10, 11, 12-year-olds, and parents take note there is an industry that can come from this. When you get to 13, 14, start to get into the maths and the science areas at school, which can lead you into further things. Is that what you're saying?
I think that's true, but I think the critical point is that you get a well-rounded education, but what will differentiate you when you try and get a job in the games industry is the stuff you've done sort of extracurricular. So the portfolio you've built, the designs you've made, the mods you've made to existing games, the blog you've written, about games every night. It's all of that surrounding material that sets you apart from the guy next door to you who's just got the degree.
Okay, so let's say, for an example, and I have no problem with sharing this, that I am very dyslexic. My English is rubbish as well. I accept that, gentlemen. But I am dyslexic. Are there things like being dyslexic that would put you into a bad position if you're trying to get into games?
No, I don't think so. It may cause you to have to work slightly harder in certain areas depending on which discipline you want to go into. But as Rick was saying, if you want to go into art, you want to go into design, it's not necessarily a negative thing. Getting a good grounding in the STEM subjects. But, and I absolutely back up what Mike's just said here, get beyond making games is magic. It's not, it's hard work. Understand what the disciplines are that go into making those games. Join an after-school club to find out, join a modders society. Get into the fact that a game is made up of code from a design with art as your building blocks. Understand what that is and get in and get hands-on as you go through. And then that will start to back up your understanding. And because your understanding's higher, then you can start to actually look at what you want to do.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I'm also slightly dyslexic, but that's what the email check is for on email, right? So before you press send, it automatically checks your email. That's what that's invented for.
No, I completely agree. I've worked with many dyslexic people in the games industry, and artists, designers, producers. It's not been obviously they work very hard at what they do, but it's not been a problem for them.
Okay, moving along to the slightly mature end of the market, as some of us are. Is there an opportunity for people to go in the industry who are plus 21? Is it difficult? Can it be done?
Yeah, you make it sound like an old cheese, by the way. Thank you very much. A lot of the students here today are working full time. They're over 21, and using Train to Game. It's a distance learning course. They do that in their spare time to achieve a qualification and learn the disciplines that they're working in and expert in as well.
I mean, I totally agree. Without dissing the younger generation, I liken the computer games industry in a lot of ways to like wanting to be a dancer or wanting to be a musician. There's a vast amount of hard work that goes behind the glitter and the glory that you see on stage. The 2% that the general public get to understand is the result of a massive amount of hard work. The slightly older person, once they reach that 21, they know who they are, they're starting to understand, they've got some life skills behind them, they start to understand that this comes as a result of hard work. I mean, these guys here have done a fantastic job in 3 to 4 months, but they've been putting in 8 to 10 hours a day trying to get to this point, that's not untypical of someone who wants to get into one of the creative multimedia industries.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually wasn't. I was 22 when I entered the industry anyway. But these courses didn't exist when I was 15 years ago when we started. Nowadays, you guys can actually super accelerate what we had to do in the early days by getting onto some of these courses. I started coding when I was 7 on Spectrum. It took me 14 years to actually get any good at it. Whereas nowadays, you can probably learn the same thing in an hour on the internet. We didn't have the internet back then. It was a different world.
And you've got world-class.
I mean, I didn't join the games industry till I was 30. So, I was a mechanical engineer. So if there's always a route. If you're passionate and skillful and dedicated, then there's always a way.
If somebody's considering retraining, there's obviously the concern that is this career path great? It's great having an ology, but if your ology at university means no job, it's pointless. So when these guys come out from training here, with the help of Epic on the program, is it Gadget Show Live? What other job opportunities? Can they get jobs anywhere, and how?
Well, yeah, job market's very tough at the moment, but there are opportunities. But what's happened in the games industry in the last 3 years really is that there's a democratization of games development. The last 10 years we've been locked into console development, which is very expensive and very restrictive and very professional, let's say. If you can't get a job in the industry, it doesn't mean you can't build games, because you can build your game and release it on iOS and make a little bit of money, and there's this, you can build yourself a studio. So, there's options now which there haven't been since early 16-bit, 8-bit kind of platforms.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and there are lots of forward-thinking companies out there like Rick's, developers and publishers who have internships and take on work placements that offer the experience, that everybody needs.
And over the last, again backing up what Mike's just said, over the last 2-3 years, the industry has totally flipped away from the old box and docks. You walk into a game, you buy a box off the shelf. Those games were costing millions and millions of pounds, were being made by huge teams. To right now, there's a real opportunity to do direct to market. We can do it on PC, we can do it on most of the consoles now. We certainly can do it on the smartphones, and that means the smaller 2, 3, 4-man indie teams are really taking off. And as we saw at the BAFTAs quite recently, with the computer game BAFTAs, some of the games that are coming out of these smaller independent studios are outstanding.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think there's certainly hundreds of new studios that started up in the last 3 years with this whole new smartphone market that's growing out there, and it's still exploding exponentially as a market. So there's lots more room for lots of really cool people to come in, and all those people are hiring. There's a certain percentage of them are not successful, but there's a decent percentage that are, and those guys are growing nicely. So.
All I would jump in and add to that is the industry, because of this, has also started moving more towards the way the film industry works, and there's now a huge amount of independent, single people, freelancers, who sign on per project the same way as you do within film studios. So I know a lot of artists, programmers and designers who work for a project and then move on to a different studio. So they're almost one-man team. Yeah.
I mean, the only thing I'd really like to add is, there's never really been a better time for new blood to get into the industry. One of our icons, John Hare, who ran a company called Sensible Software a long time ago, made games like Sensible World of Soccer and Cannon Fodder and Megalomania. When I worked with him, the teams were one artist, one programmer, one musician, and they made amazing games that are legendary now. So, and we're going through that again. It's like a renaissance.
Well, I'm going to sit as the sort of joint area between the viewer at home, sorry to everybody here for the moment, who are screaming at their TVs or PCs going, you've got all these guys, but you haven't asked them one question. What's their top tip? The real thing. What should I do? I love games and I want to come into an industry. What am I supposed to do, Mike?
Keep at it. Keep at it, because it takes dedication and it takes time. And if you get knocked back once, just get up and do it again.
It's the same like any other industry. If you really want to do something, you've got the drive, you'll get there. So just keep going. I totally agree.
I would wind back slightly and say, get your core education sorted out. Find out about what making a game costs in terms of commitment and skill sets. and then start practicing, playing. The industry, like most of the industries these days, is looking for proof of ability, not just proof of understanding. So get out there and do it and enjoy it. Enjoy the journey.
I'd say, yeah, I agree with these guys as well. Making games is hard work. It's making games is not like playing games most of the time. But yeah, you know, I think it's really important that people have passion and, you know, commitment and tenacity as well. You really do need to keep on and learn about what you want to do, and don't let that vision out of your head. You know, you really, if that's what you want to do, you can make it happen.
Okay, let's just change tack a bit. We're going to jump in Doctor Who's TARDIS. We're going to leap forward 2 years, because I've got 100 years worth of knowledge in front of me. Where is the gaming industry going to be in, I'm not going to say 5 years because it's crazy, it's moving too fast, but 18 months, 2 years down the track, where do you guys see the industry going? And we'll start with Pete.
Well, we can already see that we're moving very much towards digital downloads. You know, the whole box copy thing, as Tony said earlier, is really falling behind. I think the games market will separate into two different components, really. We'll still have these big, amazing games that cost 20, 30, 40 million pounds to make. You know, things like Assassin's Creed, that sort of thing. But we'll have lots of really good, smaller games that are highly creative, really, really creative. You know, that have been created by people who think differently, who want to innovate. And I think innovation is really something that, you know, we've missed over the last year.
In that the game player will have involvement in where the game goes as well. Do you see that level of interaction?
I mean, one of the great things about digital games is that, you know, you can track what players are doing. You know, you can measure these metrics, and you can get immediate feedback from a group of players, or, you know, from different sexes, and you can make changes to the games very quickly, and you can respond to the users, and you can make the games better because they're giving you that feedback immediately.
I mean, I totally agree with Pete. I think we're going to continue to get the blockbusters like the film industry. You know, you're going to get your Avatars, your Skyrims, etc., which are made by huge teams. They make millions and millions of pounds, and they are iconic for the entire industry. But I also think you're going to get many, many more indies coming into independents coming into the industry who are going to be doing the smaller games. And I think the smaller games are also going to change. You're going to be getting this dip in, dip out type entertainment. So we're going to be moving away from pure games and more into entertainment. There's already one of the best games of 2011 on the iPhone, iPad. Isn't really a game. It was similar to Flow and Osmo, and it was more just a beautiful experience. You couldn't actually say it was a game because you couldn't lose. There was no jeopardy in there. There was no reason to win, but it was something that absolutely gave you a great positive feeling at the end of it, and you're going to be getting more of these things.
Yeah, so I see the market going around like this, and we've got smartphones just taking off. I think we're here on this curve. There's always a bell curve and there's a long tail with this stuff. So in the next 2 years, I think we'll probably get close to that peak, and then we'll start kind of coming down.
Do you include social media in that peak as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think so. Generally, as a market, we're still growing massively. So I think in a couple of years' time, we'll have a much bigger market, lots more girls players, and we'll also start to understand that market a lot better. So we compartmentalising what genres of games are really successful. A lot more indie developers will be driving all of that success because they'll be coming in with all the innovation, you know, defining new genres and making new cool stuff. And there's always whenever you're on an exponential growth like that, there's always a bit of a gold mine situation where there's a bit of a gold rush where everybody jumps in. And that's brilliant for those new people because they can start just applying huge amounts of ideas and seeing what sticks really. So, and then out of that, you know, whole new industries are born. I mean, look at Steve Jobs and his revolutionary tactics. So I think, you know, we're here. It's going to we'll see some kind of consolidation. You know, the big guys will inevitably try and buy a lot of these independents, these more successful people, which is great. But they need to do that in order to keep moving and keep being competitive, because they're seeing most of their big business, all the big IP stuff, which costs 50 million or whatever it is to develop, But you can only do one of those 2 titles a year, and they generate $1 billion. But that's only 2 titles. Their portfolios are normally hundreds, not 2 titles. So they're moving. They're finding that difficult, but they're getting there as well. So it's going to be a really interesting 2 years. The market's going to get a lot bigger. It's a really exciting time. Beyond that, it's going to be even more interesting. I think the whole new console cycle is going to be. I'm watching that with an eagle eye. It doesn't make a lot of sense. We were talking about this yesterday to me in many ways, but I guess people still want something really good in their next to their TV. They can have a £60 million game for 60 quid. I think there's going to be some real disruption there. So I'm waiting to see what the move is.
Yeah, going to be slightly more cynical. I think we're in a magic time right now, where lots of things are possible again. Over the next couple of years, that gold rush will peter out because the big, the traditional business models will reassert themselves, and so we're already seeing it on iOS and on the platforms you can self-publish. New publishers are arising, and those routes to market are now narrowing. And so, I think probably within 2 years that opportunity will have lessened somewhat. But what will have happened is there will be the next generation of EAs and Activisions will be growing out of that, hopefully. And then we get into a really interesting time if we start thinking about where the technology goes, because we have this whole idea of cloud gaming and what the business model is, and so who knows what that's going to be. But I think whilst there's great opportunity right now, there is a first to market opportunity there, and there will again. Traditional business constantly reasserts itself. No matter how disruptive periods are, at the end of the day, you'll always come back to a kind of hydraulic supply with a few major publishers, whatever the service is controlling it, and then that gets shaken up again. So, that's my view.
To expand on some of that, I think gameplay itself is also changing. Some of the most successful games of 2011 were not designed by the team. They were almost, if you like, a platform, a box of tools that the users, the game players could use to create their own game experience. I mean, when I play World of Warcraft, it's a different experience than yours. You pick a different character class, you've chosen a different talent tree, you get a different game experience. Minecraft, it's not even a game. It's a collection of tool sets that allows you to build this massive interactive, immersive world. One of the most successful new products of last year. Little Big Planet, a hugely successful product. What is it? It's a collection of environments that you can customize to have bragging rights and to have to play with. They're not so much now controlled by the team, but you will still get those in your Skyrims and Uncharted.
Yeah, user-generated content is very, very important, and it's about creating a sense of community within gaming. Yeah. And people are social animals, and they love playing together.
Ladies and gentlemen in the audience, I'm going to throw this open to you in a minute, so think about it, get your hand up quick. One thing we haven't touched on, gentlemen, and I use the term gentleman, is games are always seen as a male-dominated, in-the-shed world, and it's almost, there's a negativity about girls coming in to the industry. Is that still true or not?
Wow. That's a tough one. I think it's got much, much better. I think certainly in terms of what games offer girls or women has changed dramatically over the last few years. And we've seen lots of new gaming genres. We've seen games that are aimed at specific groups of people, specific demographics, and women are one of those. And I think it's a huge market. But for women wanting to get into gaming as a profession, I think we've still got a lot of work to do. I think, certainly I've worked with quite a few women, designers, producers, artists, so, that they're equally capable as any man.
I think the market right now on smartphone is about 56 of female players in terms of you look at the Flurry analytics, that's what they're recording most of the time. Female gaming is rife. The stigma around it seems to have gone. They've been banished by these little devices that we can play on nowadays. So I think we're going to see a lot more kind of influx into the female gamer types and people that actually, females that understand games and want to create them and want to be involved in an industry. Because I think there has been, 2% I think was the average girl in the industry bar publishers, certainly when I ran Monumental, we had about 140 people, maybe 3, 4 top were girls. It's, you know, it's a...
I think it's important to remember that, especially over the last couple of years, we've seen a lot more games that are family games or gender-neutral games. I mean, we only have to look back at Draw Something or, you know, Scramble.
Draw Something.
Yeah. And, you know, it doesn't matter whether you're a man, a woman, a girl, or a boy, and you can all play together.
Well, yeah, I think one of the encouraging signs if you look at our, you know, competition, we've got four teams of 10, 40 people in total. 5 of those are women, so that's a slightly better percentage than is, you know, traditional. So there's some, you know, there's a slightly upward curve there. There's no impediment, you know, to women in games in terms of capability. Traditionally, gaming is a very male-dominated industry and a very male-dominated activity, and I think that's the hump that has to be overcome, is the perception. It's tough to, and it's tough if you're a woman and you're in a studio of 100 people and you're the only one. That's a little daunting, I would imagine.
I agree with all the guys. I'd just like to point out that World of Warcraft, the majority of players playing World of Warcraft are female. The vast majority of players...
Sorry, Tony, I just wanted to interrupt you there. They say they're female.
female characters.
The vast majority, I think it's 67% of players on Zynga's Facebook games are female. You know, and when they sign up, 30 million new users on one of their games in 30 days. That's a lot of girls, ladies playing the games. But the market has also changed. It's moved away from your first-person shooters, your hack and slashes. You've now got Mushy Monsters making their sort of softer games. And as the games become more attractive to female players, then you'll get more female players coming on.
Gentlemen, thank you.